Diets and workouts, you've done the work, so why can't you get to your goal weight? That's because up to 70% of your weight is predetermined by your genetics. So while you've been told that it's all about your willpower, you're actually fighting your biology. Don't do it alone. Found's doctor-designed program uses medication as part of a treatment plan that targets your body's unique biological needs, so that your body works with you and not against you. Take the quiz at joinfound.com to see if Found's weight loss program is right for you.
I'm Tim Fitzgerald at GoPowerCat.com.
And I'm Scott Chasen with Fog.net.
This is a replay of WIBW's TV show, The Drive.
Here's this week's episode on the 24/7 Sports Podcast Network.
Good evening, Wildcat and Jayhawk fans, and welcome to The Drive, sponsored by FlintHillsAuto.com. I am Tim Fitzgerald at GoPowerCat.com. The man to my right, filling in for Scott Chasen, is Mitchell Summers of WIBW Sports. Welcome.
No, I'm glad to be here. I always watch the shows or I listen to podcasts, so it's going to be weird to be on the other side. I'm going to be listening to myself this time.
Yeah, it's kind of odd.
It is very
But
bizarre.
the optics are a little more even here between the two of us. And you can interact with us on social media at Facebook.com/The Drive Show, on Twitter at The Drive 13, and of course, answer our weekly poll question and make your game predictions over at thedriveshow.com. You're doing a little bit too well currently. And remember, if you ever miss an episode of The Drive, you can listen to an audio-only version that will appear each Monday morning in the form of a podcast at both GoPowerCat.com and Fog.net. And we start things off with our 2-minute drill. The 2-minute drill is sponsored by Houlihan's. They've been expecting you for a while now. You probably should go eat there. So now let's eat.
I'll be going there sooner or later, one of these times.
We gotta do it.
They're waiting for us.
I know.
So K-State started fast, but Texas made more plays Saturday in Austin, beating the Wildcats 27-24. Tim, what does this mean for the Wildcats long term?
It kind of lowers people back to earth a little bit, I think, when you're talking in terms of what K-State fans were beginning to expect from this season, because the next 3 games are very winnable with West Virginia Tech and Iowa State coming into Manhattan, and the game is with Tex in Lubbock. It's very attainable. Texas had its back up against the wall. You expected a good shot from the Longhorns, and the Wildcats jumped out and got on top of them pretty quickly with the 14-0 lead, and then Texas kind of locked in on what they were supposed to do in this game, which was they really needed to win. But Texas has a bunch of talent. They can talk about injuries, they can talk about this and that. They still load up on 4 or 5-star guys in their recruiting class, and it's a really talented football team. K-State went in there and gave it a good shot. This game literally came down to who would make one more play or get one more call from the officials. It was that kind of back and forth. And of course, K-State had the just enormous kickoff return from the freshman Josh Youngblood that really kind of changed things back around. But it was Texas that could put together the defining drive of the game and go down the field and kick what ended up being the winning field goal. But really, K-State was on the ropes, and then Youngblood just burst through and really made a tremendous return. What this game means is, I'm going to be pretty simplistic here, K-State's 6-3, which is still ahead of schedule if you were looking at this in terms of what it meant to have a first-year coach in Manhattan. They are still bowl eligible, and as I mentioned, they still have 3 winnable games. If they end up winning 8 or 9 games in this season, I would consider it wildly successful in comparison to what, they were picked 9th in the conference, and a lot of people doubted Chris Klieman's hiring. So I think really, even though it's a loss, in some ways you take some positives out of the fact that they went to the wire with a very talented Texas team.
I will say the one thing that was wild, how the game did just drastically switch.
Yeah.
K-State was up 14-0, and Texas really had never proved themselves on defense up until this point, but then it just really flipped the opposite direction.
They kept run blitzing. They absolutely were challenging K-State to throw the ball. They kept, running up into every gap and forcing the issue with K-State. Skylar Thompson couldn't get loose to run the ball and had to throw it a little bit. They just kind of overpowered K-State at one point with just sheer talent. And, that's going to happen right now. It's still early. Chris Klieman's got a lot of recruiting to do to get this roster up to where he wants it to be. KU football just finished up its bye week after a disappointing loss to Kansas State. Mitchell, what do the Jayhawks need to do to rebound against Oklahoma State?
Well, I think it's a lot more of going back to the things that have always been plaguing KU up until this point. It's defense, defense, defense.
Right.
And looking at the stats, KU is 123rd in the nation yards allowed per game, and a lot of that's come on the ground. A lot of teams have been able to feast on that KU defense. They're giving up 126th in the nation right now in yards allowed per game. Now, unfortunately, OK State comes in with a pretty good running back in Chuba Hubbard. He's leading the nation in rushing yardage right now. It's not bad. 18 touchdowns on top of that, too. So against an inexperienced linebacker core that's really reeling from the loss of Drew Prox, and I mean, even if he were to be back, I mean, that would still be a talented, depleted linebacking core right now, and of course on the top of the defensive line. So OK State, they're the 9th best team in the nation for rushing yardage for a reason, and I mean, looking at this KU defense, it's going to be a struggle. That's more than anything. It's going to be a struggle to find that physicality to break through, take down Chuba, and try to slow down that.
I mean, they just say Oklahoma State had so many weapons. It almost strikes me that KU has to get this offense back on track after K-State shut it down and get into a shootout. They want a shootout, maybe getting Oklahoma State away from that running game and just start throwing points up, kind of replicate what they did at Texas.
It should, in a sense, turn into being that, because outside of that K-State game, of course, Oklahoma State really hasn't shown to prove themselves on defense at any point. So might be a great round 4 matchup for the Dearman experience. Of course, it did see that roadblock in the Sunflower Showdown. So I knew at some point that was going to happen. You know, some team was going to get KU. It wasn't always going to be pushing daisies, you know, for KU. So at some point it was going to hit that roadblock, and it happened. So now against a defense,
as I always point out, every game in the Big 12 is self-contained. It's all a different matchup. Doesn't matter what you did the week before or what you do the week after. Everything's a little bit self-contained, and really, truly, anyone can beat anyone.
Sure. All right. Now, Baylor rallied to beat TCU in overtime, and Oklahoma escaped disaster against Iowa State. The top 2 teams, the Big 12, meet next Saturday in Waco. How do you see this game playing out?
Well, I would think Oklahoma would win, but, you know, for all we want to talk about, Baylor isn't that good. What do? They win football games, and that's exactly what they did on Saturday in Fort Worth. I still can't explain how they ended up winning this game. This was a stinky game for the most part. I mean, there was a field goal exchange until it got into overtime when finally someone found the end zone. Going to overtime, what was it, 9-9? Sounds like 2 Germans arguing. It was not a real pretty game, but that's in part because Baylor's defense is so good. It is by far the best defense in the conference, and that's really the matchup I'm anxious to see, Mitchell. I'm anxious to see this Baylor defense and how it can handle Jalen Hurts in Oklahoma.
Yeah, I think up until this point, the Big 12's been about a lot of teams kind of eating up on themselves, right? And Baylor's been the one team that has refused to make mistakes. They're the team that's the least shot themselves in the foot out of anyone else in the Big 12. You know, even OU with that one game against K-State. So moving forward, I mean, it's really going to be if Baylor cannot commit those big mistakes, corral Jalen Hurts in some fashion, or CeeDee Lamb try to stop them. If that can happen, then it should be Baylor's game.
I stopped watching the Oklahoma-Iowa State game because I had work to do, and I just turned off the television in my hotel room when I was out on the road.
You're a busy man.
And I didn't find out until later what had happened in the controversial ending. So kudos to Iowa State, but this is the problem with Oklahoma. I'm not sure the defense is really better than what we've seen the last 2 games from Oklahoma. Yeah, we'll get to the picks later, but it's going to be very intriguing to see where everyone goes on this one, because this is going to be a good game. Now, in the bigger picture, and we'll also get to this later, I don't think either team is playoff worthy. They're just not complete things. One's got a really good offense, one's got a really good defense, and it just doesn't really match up.
Yeah, when you start talking about playoffs, this is where it gets interesting, because if Baylor does win out, wins the Big 12 championship, then it's really difficult not to include them. But
they're unbeaten. I don't know how you don't include an unbeaten major power conference champion.
Oh, I can feel Alabama burning.
I can too. Now a quick look at your poll question results. And poll questions are brought to you by Film at 11, your go fast, look good, play hard custom shop.
And last week's question was, will Udoka Azubuike make only, he made 34.4% of his free throws last year. What will be his percentage this year? A, 0 to 34%. That was at 20%. Now, B, 35 to 44%, 50% more of what people were expecting, probably around where it'll be. C, get a little more positive, 45 to 54%, 20%. Now, here's where you lose me. The 55% or better, it's at 10%. I just don't see that happening.
I don't know who voted for that, but that's the same people think that I'm attractive. This week's question is, after the injury to Jalen Wilson, should Bill Self consider removing Mitch Lightfoot's red shirt? Here are your answers. A, yes right away. B, yes, but only if the team struggles. C, no. D, I want a cookie. That's not actually one of the answers.
I like the D option.
I know. Vote at thedriveshow.com.
That's a tough one, you know.
I like Mitch Lightfoot. I think he brings a lot to the court. I think they probably do need to play him.
It's something that this defense or this KU team overall is just missing shooting, you know, and it's going to put a lot more pressure on Isaiah Moss, the Iowa transfer, to come in and really stretch the defense to try to find some type of shooting, because Devon Dotson and Ochai Agbaji, they're not two knockdown shooters. So Mitch Lightfoot's probably the second best shooter on the team right now. So at some point, if the team continues to struggle to score points, then that's the only option.
Yep. Well, that'll do it for this half of the 2-minute drill. We'll be right back with more on KU and K-State on The Drive.
Selling a little or a lot? Shopify helps you do your thing, however you cha-ching. Shopify is the global commerce platform that helps you sell at every stage of your business. From the launch your online shop stage, to the first real-life store stage, all the way to the did we just hit 1 million orders stage. Shopify's here to help you grow. Whether you're selling scented soap or offering outdoor outfits, Shopify helps you sell everywhere. From their all-in-one e-commerce platform to their in-person POS system, wherever and whatever you're selling, Shopify's got you covered. Shopify helps you turn browsers into buyers with the internet's best converting checkout. 15% better on average compared to other leading commerce platforms. And sell more with less effort thanks to Shopify Magic, your AI-powered all-star. Shopify powers 10% of all e-commerce in the US. And Shopify is the global force behind Allbirds, Rothy's, and Brooklinen, and millions of other entrepreneurs of every size across 175 countries. Plus, Shopify's award-winning 24/7 help is there to support your success every step of the way. Because businesses that grow with Shopify. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/Odyssey Podcast, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/Odyssey Podcast now to grow your business, no matter what stage you're in. Shopify.com/Odyssey Podcast.
Welcome back to The Drive as we continue our weekly 2-minute drill. The 2-minute drill is sponsored by Houlihan's. They've been expecting you. Now let's eat.
Now, the K-State basketball team went to Sin City. You were there and needed overtime but the Wildcats beat UNLV 60-56. How nice was this win for Bruce Weber's team?
It wasn't pretty, but in terms of what it meant for this team, it was really good. Now, let's remind you that last year the Wildcats won the Big 12 and went 0-3 in their true non-conference road game. So this team accomplished something last year's team couldn't pull off. And Bruce Weber said that last year's team, even though they lost at Marquette, they seemed to really grow from the experience of going out on the road and finally found their way once they got into Big 12 road games and started winning. This was an ugly game. I mean, K-State had 16 points at halftime. The Wildcats are really going to struggle to find their offense for a while, but they did kind of step up, and it really was, you know, early in that second half, Xavier Sneed hit some 3-pointers, and they got it rolling. And once K-State kind of climbed back into it, there was another surge by UNLV to go up for 5, and then K-State got right back into it with another 3 points from Xavier Sneed from the free throw line. K-State stood toe-to-toe with a scrappy UNLV team playing in front of about 9,000 fans, which for them was a big crowd. And there was a lot of K-Staters there. It's a nice win. I mean, it's not going to push anything on the resume. At the end of the day, UNLV is not going to help them get in the NCAA tournament. Winning on the road against a Mountain West team is going to help them. That is certainly worth noting. And K-State's young players got into a scrap and found a way to win. And with those 3 freshmen, I think it's really encouraging that K-State was able to do that.
You've seen in back-to-back games now, first it was Cartier Jada. In the first game, he helped close the game against NDSU. Now this one against UNLV, Xavier Sneed stepped up big when they needed him. So now now in back-to-back times, K-State's found someone that's been able to step up. That's something that they were looking to replace from last year's trio, right? So to have this type of an experience should pay dividends for those guys.
It should. You know, both Jada and Sneed were high-volume scorers. They shot a lot of shots to get their points at UNLV. Not good. They're going to have to find more relaxed, natural ways to get offense. I think these freshmen will develop into scorers. They all have skill. You can see it. And they'll settle in. I'm warning K-Staters, though, this is going to be a little bit of a roller coaster. There's going to be a lot of things, a lot of lessons to be learned along the way for this group.
Right.
The Kansas basketball team was already redshirting 2 players. Another went down on Friday as Jalen Wilson is set to miss 3 months with a broken ankle. That would probably be my life. I'd probably just have to be put down. Mitchell, have the season expectations already changed for KU basketball?
Well, if you're asking if the season expectations have changed, I'm going to ask you to take a look into my comment sections for anything KU related. Because after that loss against Duke, everyone still expected them to come out on top in that game. So to answer shortly, no, expectations haven't changed. This is still a team that fans are expecting to make a deep tourney push and still technically has the talent to do so. You know, there's the big man, Udoka Azubuike. He's one of the best bigs in the country, regardless if he can shoot above 40% from the free throw line or not. And then I really do think Ochai Agbaji has a chance to be a special athlete, especially on the wing. That's where I think we'll make, when he's defending other perimeter players, I think that's where he has a chance to be really special with his length. And then Devon Dotson, he's a great slash and kick type of guy. Now, the problem being, what's going to happen when you kick it, you know? Isaiah Moss is a guy that if you probably later on down the line is someone that you can rely upon a little bit more to stretch out the defense and shoot, but he's still dealing with a hamstring injury. So what does that mean for the rest of the team? That's why we're asking if Mitch Lightfoot's a guy that should come back, because simply put, he can shoot. And KU's, I mean, the tactic everyone's going to have to defend them is just to stash the paint.
Right.
Keep Devon from getting to the paint, you know, stop Udoka Azubuike, triple team him maybe, and if they can find some type of shooting, that's what they need. So,
well, despite this injury, KU's still the most talented team in the Big 12.
Right.
They still have a big man that can, you know, defend the rim and take away the lane from opposing offenses, which is always good for the way Bill Self wants to play and get out and run a little bit. I think they're going to be fine, and Coach Self is really good at adjusting to these things, kind of reinventing his team on the fly.
Someone will step up.
And now we step out of bounds. Well, LSU went into Alabama and won, while Minnesota toppled Penn State. Did not see that one coming. What does this mean for the college football playoff? And as of now, what 4 teams belong in that playoff?
Oh, I mean, I feel everyone can confidently give at least 3.
3.
But that
Exactly.
4th one is where things get really hairy.
Okay, LSU and Ohio State are incredible football teams. I think we can all sit here today and hope that that's the national championship game. But that's just shoving aside a Clemson team that has a program that has proven to be of national title quality year in and year out. So that's exactly why we have the playoff. Those 3 teams are unbeaten. Those 3 teams right now belong in. You've got to keep the asterisk for Minnesota and Baylor, don't you? I mean, I can't believe Minnesota won that game.
Right. At least a little bit. The option is still there. So things have a chance to get really messy. If you have,
It really does.
if Ohio State, let's say they lose to Minnesota, let's say Ohio State doesn't win the Big Ten championship game. Now you have a couple of one-loss teams that are chilling around there. Then like that will throw in Alabama, but then what does that mean for the 4th team there? So now it's whoever's going to win out and not make those big mistakes.
Alabama is just going to be the 4th team unless someone's unbeaten, and you know, as long as Alabama only has 1 loss. I mean, you lose at home, that should be a bigger mark than losing on the road. But that LSU team is so good. That was an epic game. Alabama's going to probably be in, and let's be blunt about it. ESPN and ABC want that because we're looking at right now the way the teams will probably be seated. You would have an LSU-Alabama semifinal.
Right. I think the world would burn if Alabama was not represented.
It's going to be time to move on from Alabama eventually, folks.
Right. Now, well, let's hear from the fans. Our fan question this week is K-State has 3 freshmen seeing time. Which do you think has the chance to be the biggest star?
Well, this is a really good class. I mean, I really like all 3 guys, but there's something about Montavious Murphy's game that I really, really like. They list him at 6'9". Come on. He's about 6'7", and he's a wing guy, and I think he's more suited to be a 3. He's playing the 4 a little bit, but he can score inside out. He's very active. He's long. Someone made a great comparison. He looks exactly like a Baylor player, just long and lanky and all over the place and can shoot the ball. I really like Murphy. I like both of the Gordons too. Dejuan and Antonio, I think they're both going to be really good players. Maybe they have a little more development with their game, and Murphy has more development with his body, but it's a really promising class. Add in the 4 freshmen that they look to be signing here in the early signing period for next year, and the program's really getting an incredible foundation.
Right. There's going to be a lot of opportunities at those guard positions, so Dejuan can step up and get
really
the chance.
Really can.
Well, remember to ask us your questions on our Facebook page and on Twitter at The Drive 13. When we return, we look at our predictions here on The Drive.
Imagine the softest sheets you've ever felt. Now imagine them getting even softer over time. I'm here to tell you about Boll & Branch sheets. In a recent customer survey, 96% replied that Boll & Branch sheets get softer with every wash. They're made from the rarest organic cotton and designed to get even softer over time. Try their sheets with a 30-night guarantee plus 15% off your first order with code Odyssey. So head to BOLLandbranch.com today. Exclusions apply. See site for details.
Welcome back as we head down the home stretch of this week's show, and now it's time to take a look at our predictions. I'm so excited I can't speak. The predictions are brought to you by Vanderbilt, your work boot center, and remember to make your weekly predictions at thedriveshow.com. And let's look at last week's results. Let's do it. Look at Fitz. I just thought you said myself in the third person.
You're making a comeback.
I know. I go 3-0 and still look at my overall record. I'm in last. The fans are in first. Scott Chasen is somewhere in the middle. He went 1-2 and then took the week off out of pure shame. We know what it was.
You got to take the week one at a time.
I know, and I stink. Now this week's picks start with Oklahoma. Now I find this surprising. -9.5. They're favored by 9.5 points in Waco. So will Oklahoma win by 10 or more points in Waco, you say?
I just don't see that happening.
I don't either.
Like that is just a wide margin to have to find.
It's a big number on the road against an unbeaten team with a good defense. Look, Oklahoma might win this game, but I don't think it'll be by 10 or more points, so I'll take Baylor on that number.
Right. Now, next is Kansas plus 19 at Oklahoma State. What are you thinking?
Well, Oklahoma State now, we're talking needs to beat Kansas by 20 or more points. I just laid out the map, the shootout map, to get it under that number, and I don't think it'll work. Oklahoma State's going to win this game big.
OK State, I think, will win this game ultimately, but by that margin, I'm not sure.
That's where I wrestled with. I mean, if Kansas scores 40-plus points, you're going to have problems outscoring them by 20 or more.
Right. At the end of the day, that's what I think it's going to be. And on top of that, like the way OK State's going to run the ball, it's going to kill the clock, and they're going to ultimately not want to give the ball to any chance that Brent Dearman shows what that offense can do.
That's why we invited him to be on the show. And last week's game is West Virginia plus 12 at K-State. So K-State is favored by 12 points. Will they win by basically 2 touchdowns? I say yes.
I say yes, too, considering that this team, every time they feel like they've dropped or come behind, they always roar back in some fashion.
Right.
So I think this is an opportunity against a rather lackluster West Virginia team for K-State to have that time where they roar back.
Yep. Again, make your picks over at thedriveshow.com. And now it's time for our On the Clock segment. On the Clock is sponsored by Carpet One, buy local for a strong local community. And we start off with Mitchell Summers.
For me, I want to go to that LSU-Alabama game one more time. There is, more importantly, outside of all the fanfare associated with the game, you know, it's LSU and Alabama, and this is something that could ultimately lead to LSU making it to a championship game or Alabama missing a championship game. Outside of all those things, I want to just talk about Coach Orgeron. He's a guy that has been around the block for a little while in college football, and a guy who had said he'd missed his opportunity at Ole Miss and come to LSU now. He's a Louisiana guy, and you can't help but feel really great for him to have his moment with his team as a Louisiana guy.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. That was a big win. K-State fans, you're in for kind of a wild ride this year. Football's already giving you maybe more than you expected. At 6-3, they might end up with 7, 8, 9 wins. We don't know. They might lose another game or two and break your heart. Basketball is going to be kind of a roller coaster all season. They're going to beat some people and lose some people that you think they should beat. Just don't sweat it. You know, don't sweat the petty stuff and don't pet the sweaty stuff, as my dad used to tell me. And I think it's just going to be a fun season of K-State sports, even with the highs and lows. And that's it for this week's edition of The Drive. We will see you next week right here. Maybe Scott will be back, and all week on social media.
With Blue Link Plus, you can access your Hyundai Tucson Limited remotely. Doors unlocked, temperature set, lost car found.
There it is.
Get complimentary class-leading Blue Link Plus. Call 562-314-4603 for complete details.